Welcome to the National Center on Self-Employment, Business Ownership, and Telecommuting webcast series. Today, we will be talking about telecommuting. My name is Julie McComas. I am with Griffin Hammis Associates, and I am joined today by our special guest, Dustin Clark, who is a freelance web designer with Muscular Dystrophy Association. And today we're going to be talking with you about Dustin's experience with telecommuting. So we're going to cover a lot of information about how Dustin got started, all the way through the various kinds of supports that he has utilized, some that he's been able to find and some that have been more challenging. And we're going to work through talking about even work-life balance. So Dustin, thanks so much for joining us today. We are glad to have you here and to hear from you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your pre-work experience, how you got where you are today? So maybe even thinking back to high school and the kind of things that you were experiencing then, and then kind of take us through what kinds of experiences and education you've had that have helped you get your job in telecommuting.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm Dustin Clark. I'm a 28-year-old graphic designer living on OSU campus in Columbus, Ohio. So I do graphic design, and I sort of became interested in graphic design in high school. I took a technical school program called multimedia that I did in my junior and senior year. And it was basically graphic design, web design, animation, and then some video stuff. And so I sort of, from an early age, knew I wanted to do graphic design. So right out of high school, I decided to go to Columbus State Community College, and I got my 2-year degree there in digital design and graphics. And in my, last couple semesters there, I got to do an internship with this company, Bend, and they do athleisure, athletic apparel, and especially custom leggings. So I got to design a lot of different custom leggings and work with apparel. So that was kind of a cool, my first job and a good transition into working in that field. So then I decided to go to OSU and do the visual communication design program. And so that's where I kind of solidified my skills and built up some confidence in what I was doing. And then while I was there, I did a part-time job with the Office of Student Life at OSU. And basically they do graphics for all the organizations on campus, all the departments. So I got to do kind of a wide range of things there. And then once I graduated, I decided to go freelance, especially with COVID, because I graduated right when COVID hit. And I was the first class not to have an in-person graduation. So that kind of, I actually had a couple of other, I was going to keep working with the Office of Student Life, and I was going to work for an art gallery on campus, but then COVID blew up the whole thing. So I ended up finding this job freelancing for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And it was an interesting, it's kind of cool the way it all happened. I'm also a musician, so that's sort of my hobby. And a friend of mine, Brandon Abbott, decided to do a documentary on me and my sort of creative process as a disabled person. So we made this film called Dustin Clark, The Humanity and Who We Are. And through that, we entered some rare disease film festivals and things like that. And MDA happened to find me through that. They were looking for a designer and they were interested in my story. And so they hired me. So that's what I've been doing ever since. And I worked with Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities through all of that. And they, through all my schooling, they paid for my education, which was amazing. And, they helped me along the way to find a job. So. Okay, so this is just to give you an idea of the kind of work I do. This open magazine thing was my thesis project for OSU, where I shared stories from the disability community. And so for me, as a graphic designer, I've never been very interested in like corporate design. I don't really want to sell cheeseburgers, by designing for McDonald's or something like that. I always wanted to do stuff that I believed in. So, I like helping the disabled community. And then this Asia's Hope logo, that was something I designed in college too. They're an orphanage organization over in Asia. So I got to design for them, which was great. And then here on the right, this is something that I've done with the Muscular Dystrophy Association. Every year they do this fundraiser during the month of June, where they raise money for muscular dystrophy research. And I got to design this T-shirt to commemorate the 40-year anniversary of the program. So yeah, it's just a little sample of my work.
So Dustin, why don't you tell us what a typical workday looks like for you? And you just kind of back up a little bit. We're talking about telecommuting as part of this, the work that we're doing through the Center on Self-Employment. We're talking about sometimes different terms that are interchangeable, remote working, working from home, telecommuting. And we know that people use those terms kind of sometimes all meaning the same thing. And sometimes for people, it might mean that you're working from home. It might mean that you're working from a hotel in a different state, because that's where you are. Or maybe it means that you go to a coffee shop and do your work. But for the most part, what we're talking about is doing work where you're not like every day going to the office where you're working in person with all of your coworkers. So you're working remotely. What does that work? How does that kind of work out for you? What does a work day look like for you?
Yeah. So I get up in the morning and I have my home health aides who get me ready for the day. And then I usually start my day around 11 a.m. And basically I just, I sit at my desk with my laptop here and I just make myself available from a certain time to a certain time. So I do from like, right now I'm just working part-time. So I just make myself available from like 11 to about 3:30. And so I just hop on my emails and see what kind of work we've got going. MDA, they have a planner that we use, so I can go there for projects. And basically I just get to work and end my day around 3:30 and work on other projects and things.
Are you usually just working on something by yourself, or are you collaborating, using some kind of like Zoom or something like that, having meetings or working with other people from the organization?
Yeah. So the design team, we meet every Thursday. We have a meeting, and then we work with the marketing team and the social media and all that. So there's several meetings throughout the week. It's been really good to check in with the design team so we can kind of communicate more directly on the projects we're working on and any questions we have. And so it's me and the design lead, and there's another freelance designer. And the three of us kind of work together to, figure out who's doing what project and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of how we stay in touch, and we have a little chat that we use throughout the day as well.
We'll talk about technology here in a moment, but do you normally work from home, or do you go to a space in the community and work there? Like, how do you, like, where do you work every day?
Yeah, usually from home. Right now I'm working on potentially going somewhere else a couple times a week, just to get me out of my apartment. Um, that's one of the tough things about telecommuting is you're sort of stuck in your little house all the time. Yeah.
What about telecommuting makes it a good fit for you? Like, why is, like kind of the way that you're working now, uh, the best fit?
Yeah. For me, it's tough with transportation is a little bit hard, and just getting ready in the morning takes me a while. So MDA was a really good fit. I have Becker muscular dystrophy, so um, that they're a perfect fit for me. And they're very, they understand the disability, and so they've been very, you know, open with me in letting me figure out my schedule. So, I'm not ready for the day till 11 a.m. Um, so, they're very accommodating with that. So yeah, so for me, it's just great because I can set my own schedule, and I think especially for my profession, it's as long as I'm getting things done by the deadline, I can kind of work when I want during the day. Um, and then transportation, I don't have to go anywhere, because that adds a whole nother, you know, amount of time that I have to get to work. So yeah, so it really works for me.
And when it comes to challenges, you mentioned that sometimes just kind of being in your apartment all the time can be, maybe that's a little bit of a challenge. Are there other challenges with telecommuting that you run into regularly or occasionally?
Yeah, I definitely think working alone is you miss people. It's nice to have that, you know, you feel a little more connected with the team when you're in person and all that. So that's why it's nice to have chats and regular meetings and stuff. Um, let's see, that's definitely the main challenge. I think for me, probably for everyone, when you're working from home, it's easy to get distracted um, by your environment. So yeah, I'm definitely working on getting away, going to a coffee shop or something, and just because it helps me focus. So yeah, I think those are the main challenges. Just, you have to be disciplined and make sure you're going to do your work. Um, yeah, I think those are probably the main two challenges for me.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about the technology that you use for your work. It sounds like in talking to you previously that you are using some pretty traditional, technology. I mean, your laptop, and kind of how you have things set up. Is there anything like in the way that, I guess, is there anything that would be considered assistive technology that you use? Any programs on your computer that make it easier for you to do your work? Or any way that you have your space set up so that it is, it's possible for you to get things accomplished?
Yeah. So right now it's pretty lo-fi. I just use my little notebook that you see there and my laptop. And I would say, like, I don't have a ton of assistive technology, but I could use it. So I think I could talk about that a little bit. One thing I would say is, like, my keyboard and mouse, these Mac keyboards are really easy to press. I've had issues in the past with, like, um, the ones with the raised keys that are a little bit harder to press. Um, so I definitely say the laptop is really nice for that. And I have a really low profile mouse that I found, that I kind of like. But I'd say, like, right now, I my desks and my setup is really not ideal for me. Um, so I'm working with my occupational therapist over at OSU, um, try to get things a little bit better. So, my desk height and, the way the way my hands sit when I'm working, sometimes my hands will fall asleep, or, I'll feel a little sore. So I definitely say that's a challenge, because I think it's, everybody's different with their disability. So you have to kind of figure out your own, perfect little setup. And for me, it's very experimental. I'm just like, well, I'll buy this mouse and see if it works. And so yeah, so that's a challenge.
So tell us a little bit about your experience with vocational rehabilitation. Now, in joining us today are people across the country who maybe work as counselors with vocational rehabilitation, and we welcome you. Thank you for being here. Some of you out there are providers who help people find jobs, who help people figure out assistive technology, who help people learn their jobs, maybe as job coaches and other kinds of employment professionals. And so, we know that every state is different and the kinds of supports that they can provide. And I'm just curious about your experience with vocational rehabilitation in Ohio. Were they at all involved in your educational experiences, like at Columbus State, or even back in high school? Did you have any assistance? When did you get involved with VR?
Yeah, so I think I started, it must have been right after high school with OOD, Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. And yeah, so they helped me pay for my school, which was huge. That was the biggest thing that was the biggest support for me, is that I graduated college debt free, which is amazing. So yeah, so they paid for my Columbus State, and paid for my OSU. I think I ended up paying for a couple semesters because I didn't submit, in time for them to pay it. But I'm really happy with that.
Dustin, when you got started with VR, when you were getting started with your education, did you already know? I mean, it sounds like you kind of knew you wanted to be in this field or something similar. So when you were doing planning with your VR counselor, did you already have like an employment goal of being a graphic designer, or do you remember that, like what you guys established as a goal early on?
Yeah, I think graphic design was definitely the goal from the start. And then, I got that internship with Bend, and I decided, they actually offered me a full-time job with that. And I ended up turning it down to go to OSU. So I think we must have pivoted after that. But yeah, the end goal was always to get a graphic design job.
Did you work? I know you probably had a vocational rehabilitation counselor through OOD. Do you recall if you worked with any like community partners? Like, was there like a job development agency or anything like that you worked with, or was everything right through your VR counselor?
Yeah, I think we worked with Franklin County Job and Family Services, and so that was, they give you like basic job training, like it was like how to answer phones, how to, count money. Like I think, and so I think that's going to be one of the interesting things with me, is that, a lot of times people with disabilities, they're looking for like, jobs bagging at Kroger, or, really, really simple jobs like that. And I think sometimes, some people have physical disabilities, some people have mental ones. And so for me, I kind of knew I didn't really want to go that direction. So yeah, so that was one of the, it's interesting. I haven't thought about that in a long time, but yeah, when I was going to Columbus State, or maybe before that, we did the job and family services route. And so for me, I always knew what I wanted to do. And so I think one of the challenges for my VR counselors was like, how do they support me looking for jobs? Because, they weren't used to looking for a technical job like this, graphic design. So I had to kind of do a lot of my own searching, and they were just there to support me if I needed it, that kind of thing.
It sounds like ultimately you found your own job. Is that right? With MDA, like, well, or they found you, I think is what you said. Like they
Yeah,
discovered you and kind of recruited you themselves. Is that correct?
yeah, it was the networking, yeah.
Did you ever have a job coach, like anyone that came in and assisted you with learning anything about the job or doing any of the like HR paperwork, or do you handle all of that on your own?
Yeah, I think we must have done some interview training and that kind of stuff. So they helped me in that sense. Yeah, um, yeah, that's basically
Good.
it.
Helpful. Thank you so much. Give me a moment to advance. So let's talk a little bit about the supports that you have and that you use at work. And like I think we all um, realize this from hearing you talk, is that you do a lot of things very independently. So there's probably more supports available, but you're um, making things work on your own. But let's talk a little bit about if any experience you have with these supports. The first one being employer accommodations. Tell us about how you have negotiated your tasks and your schedule and all of that with your employer. If I recall correctly, maybe you were working full-time at one point and you actually negotiated that down a little bit because it was better for you to not be working full-time. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I was actually working remote with Bend back in the day, and yeah, I've had really good bosses. I've been very lucky that way, where they've been very understanding and open to helping me with whatever I needed. I guess I didn't need a whole ton of like physical um, help. But yeah, so MDA, been working with them, and yeah, I started out full time. And again, they're perfect for me because they understand disability. They work with people with disabilities all the time. So um, they were very, very accommodating. They were open to whatever I needed, basically. And like one of the things I told them at the beginning is that like I start my day pretty late. I can't be ready till 11 a.m. Um, and the cool thing is most of them are in a different time zone. Um, and MDA is actually all remote. Everybody's all over the US. So I don't even know if they have a main office, but yeah, so different time zones. I start at 11, which is actually 10 a.m. for them. So it works out a little bit, but um, yeah, so I was working full time for them. And I'd say like one of the big challenges with working as a disabled person is that you have to, you're kind of constantly having to assess what you can do and what you can't do. Um, so I find that I have certain levels of energy, and once I'm out of energy, I'm kind of down for the count. So I it's kind of a constant struggle to figure out, okay, how much can I work and how much is too much. Um, so I was finding that full time was just too much for me. Um, so I asked my bosses if I could work part time, and they were totally understanding of that. And yeah, they've been really great. Um, I imagine some employers may not be as accommodating, but I've been very lucky.
Tell us a little bit about how you utilize networking and how important that has been for you? And what does it mean to you?
Yeah. Yeah. So, that documentary that I did with my friend, that was a really cool way to sort of draw attention to me and what I was doing. And I've had several opportunities from that, just from the film. As people see it, and they want to hear what you have to say, and I've got some design work from that too. So that's been really big. And I use LinkedIn. That's kind of how I found the OSU job, and then the other internship that I was looking at before COVID hit. I found that through LinkedIn, which was great. So yeah, I think what they say is true, that's the world now, is that you network, and that's how you sort of find your opportunities.
Tell us a little bit about, I guess we can combine these things, Social Security benefits and your benefits assessment and planning. When you first started working, before you started working, you were receiving Social Security benefits, right? Like a monthly payment, correct? And did you have a benefits assessment or like a benefits planning session done with like a certified work incentive coordinator or your VR, somebody through VR that kind of sat down with you to say, here are kind of the work incentives through Social Security. Here's how much money you can make before you start having to make choices about keeping your Social Security. How did that go for you?
Yeah, that was great. I've had counselors and stuff, and yeah, definitely, I think from the start we did a benefits assessment and talked about my options, and I guess, yeah, I don't know that I ever did the what did you call it, the SSA thing?
Like a benefits assessment or Social Security, work incentives, where somebody kind of sat down and looked at that with you.
Yeah, I don't know that I did a work incentive. I've always been on SSI, and I'll talk about this HUD subsidized rent too. One of the things, finances are interesting for a disabled person. They're kind of complicated. And so actually where I live at a place called Creative Living on campus. And so they work with HUD, and my rent is subsidized. So every year my landlord looks at my SSI benefits and looks at how much money I'm making with my job, and sort of reassesses my rent accordingly. And so actually OOD was helping me pay my rent too. We have these resident assistants that are on call 24/7 where I live. And so OOD was paying $200 a month to pay the RA fee. And so once I found a job, this MDA job, my case was actually closed with OOD because we had met our goal. So I am now paying the RA fee, and then I'm making enough money that I don't make any Social Security each month now. So so we're about to reassess with my landlord. Okay, I'm not making any Social Security. I'm paying my RA fee. Here's the amount of money I'm making. Here are my expenses. So it gets a little complicated. But ultimately I want to be independent, and being off of Social Security is one of the things I want in my life. So yeah, so that's been very interesting. And OOD was really helpful with that.
Let's talk a little bit about non-work supports that you have that help you to be able to be ready for work and have what you need to work. You mentioned some of them previously. So tell us a little bit about, you talked about the start of your day. So tell us a little bit about what, like, family and friends, how they support you. either on a, day-to-day basis or even outside of work?
Yeah, yeah, and I would also include this in one of the challenges of working remote is that you don't get to have people around you to sort of support you. So yeah, my family's been great. My dad has really been someone who has encouraged me to work hard and you know helped me learn how to be a productive person. I think I've always struggled with sort of laziness or just being laid back. So, my parents have always been really good about teaching me how to be productive. And then friends, yeah, I would say like um, it can be tough to get out and about. And so that's another reason that I'm trying to get, go work at a coffee shop or something. There's a coffee shop called the Roosevelt here and in Ohio that in Columbus that a lot of my friends go there. So I'm like, I'd like to see more people. But yeah, I think that, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
you know,
That's good.
when I was working from my parents' house and stuff too, they would they'd help me get whatever equipment I needed and a desk and that kind of stuff. So
And then you also have paid aides that come and assist you in getting ready in the morning. So you have in Ohio, we have Medicaid home and community-based waivers. So you can have someone come and assist you in basically whatever you need help with or want help with. And so you kind of have some braided funding around that. You're able to use some support through the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, and then some county funded support as well in the evenings. So how does that work for you? Like,
yeah. So I'm on the self waiver, which basically means I get a certain amount of income every month, and I can use that to pay aides and stuff. So yeah, so I would say home health is a challenge. I've been through a lot of different companies, a lot of different aides, and it's the combination of good leadership and good help is rare, I would say. So, but no, yeah, I mean they the only reason I can do what I have the life that I have is because of my home health aides. So, they come every morning, every night, and they get me ready for the day, and yeah, that really helps me be independent. Um, and through the self waiver, I'm working on some transportation stuff too, and it's a really nice program that gives me some options. Yeah, so that's huge for me.
and you mentioned transportation being a challenge, which I'm sure that everyone listening in that works, with people in their own communities has the same difficulty in ensuring that people have transportation to and from work, if that is something that they're doing. Like if you're considering, going to work at the Roosevelt a couple days a week, where you're going to set up your laptop, but even being able to get there dependably can be difficult. And the same with just making sure that you have transportation to do those fun things that you want to do out in the community. That can be really difficult. I think that in Ohio with the self waiver, your transportation can be paid for. So that's cool. But then ensuring that you have dependable transportation providers maybe is a little bit more difficult. Do you utilize any kind of transportation support right now to get out? And what do you do?
Yeah, I'm kind of currently in process. So I do have a handicap van, which well, technically it's my dad's van, but we park it here, and so friends and family can take me places with that. But you can't always ask someone to come and take you everywhere. So I'm kind of in the process right now of figuring out transportation with the self waiver, because I was using Yellow Cab, and I basically had nothing but trouble with Yellow Cab. That they didn't. The one time I tried to use them, they didn't even show up. And then I ended up calling them again, and they were like, you know, we all of our handicap vans are in the shop or something. And then I was like, okay. So, you know, I tried a new place and a new company, and there's always challenges with basically everything. So it was very expensive. That was the big thing, is it cost like $60 round trip or
Oh
something.
my gosh.
And then, they get me in their van and I can barely fit in their van because I'm too tall. And so, you know, I'm working with the self waiver and getting that, they'll pay for it, which is a big thing. But like finding a company that they actually worked with and they trust and all that, it's a little complicated, but we're working on it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's an all too common experience that I think probably everybody on this call has heard something similar. And we hope that you find good solutions there so you can get out into the community more often. Let's talk just a little bit about work-life balance. There's you've mentioned some of these things in our, as we've been talking throughout. Tell us a little bit about what you do when you're not at work. Like, what do you do for fun that's just important to you, and kind of just make sure life meaningful.
Yeah. I would say, as a freelancer, well, okay, I'll start with, the things that are important to me. So I mentioned music before. I write and record music as a hobby. So I've got my studio actually right behind me. You can see one of the speakers over there. So that's something that's really important to me. And then family is really big. I'm really close with my family, so we're usually doing things throughout the week and on the weekends. So making time for them is really important. And then as a freelancer, right now I've got the nice thing about MDA is it's kind of it's a part-time gig. So I'm making enough money to survive, but one of the challenges with that is like right now there just aren't a lot of projects because it's the summertime. People are taking time off, and they sort of set up their calendar so that things land at certain times a year. So now I'm having to pick up other work, and so that can get a little complicated. And trying to make myself available to MDA if they need anything real quick, while working on other things. It's a challenge. And I would say, like, again, being stuck in one apartment, most of my life is in this little apartment. So for me, a big thing is getting out and getting walks and getting away from my apartment a little bit, and hanging out with friends and family and stuff. And then, being social has its challenges with transportation and everything else. So there's just, again, like figuring out how much can I do and what's too much for me as a disabled person. So that's a big thing. I wrote down distractions at home here. That's definitely something, because it's, Netflix is just a click away, or YouTube or whatever. And my phone's next to me, and it's just, I wrote down accountability too. Like, I don't have a boss that's sort of standing over my shoulder, keeping me accountable. So I have to sort of figure that out for myself. I have to make myself say, okay, I'm going to work from this time to this time. I'm not going to watch YouTube until, this time of night. And another thing is like figuring out breaks and lunchtime and things like that. And that's one of the blessings of working from home, is you can sort of figure out, you have a lot of time with yourself to figure out a good schedule for yourself, and a good, how to stay productive and all that.
So as we kind of wrap this up, tell us a little bit about what you think are the most important strategies for success. If someone were considering looking for work, they think maybe telecommuting is going to be a good fit. Like they really like the idea of working from home or working remotely. What are those key things that you think people would need to know so that they can be successful in doing that type of work?
Yeah. So I got some bullets here. Stay in close contact is really important. Because again, like even just to stay accountable and stay working, it's good to see people face to face that you're working with. So we're chatting throughout the week. We have a lot of Zoom meetings at MDA, keeping in contact with email. And then I even have the numbers of the design team and we text each other. So just, it helps to communicate with each other and stay on top of things and say, I'm working on this. What are you working on? And, we can kind of trade projects and say, hey, I'm too busy. Can you take this? Things like that. So that's really important because you're just missing that when you're in the room. Like when I worked at OSU, I was in the room with all the designers. And so we could just say like, hey, can you come look at this? And you're trying to sort of simulate that with your Zoom meetings and stuff and tech. So, and it can be done. And like, I would even say if your employers don't have something in place, like push for that. Say, hey, can we meet face to face a couple times a week? That's really important. And then, like I was kind of saying earlier, figuring out your own habits and what you need at home. I think that's one of the cool things is that sometimes at a desk job or where you're working with other people, you get bosses that aren't very flexible and don't really think about that as much. And I am a freelancer, so I am my own boss. But yeah, I think you got to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. I think Zoom I think remote working is going to continue to be a thing in the future. Because I think video chat software and stuff, no one really took it seriously until COVID hit. And I think we realized it's definitely a viable option. And so I think just because you don't have to transport to and from work, it's kind of it's a nice thing. You can figure out what works for you. And then, figuring out your own needs, definitely communicating needs with the employers. That was huge, from the job interview. It's important to bring up, hey, I need this, this, and this. And, hopefully your employers will work with you and you may find that they won't, and then you need to find another gig. That's really important. And needs change. That's one of the, I think, difficulties of hiring someone with a disability is that over time things change. So, my morning schedule changed here recently. I used to start work at 10 or 10:30. Now I start at 11. And so my bosses have been very flexible with that. So that's good. And then I mentioned, several times, getting away from home is important. Because you just go crazy after a while, especially in the wintertime when you're stuck inside. And also I would say create a work environment that works for you. Make sure you've got a comfortable setup and I've heard of people putting their desk right in front of a window so they can look outside during the day. So that's, try to go work somewhere if you can, at a coffee shop or just outside even. And then this last one is just this is one of my favorite things about working from home and doing that is you can listen to whatever music you want. You can put on podcasts. Sometimes I'll even put a little like Netflix comedy series down in the corner while I'm working, or something like that. And it depends on the job. For me, as a designer, you can kind of put your head down and just listen and sort of just go into the design zone and just do that, and that helps pass the time. So yeah, just set up things you enjoy. Make sure you have a fun lunch and that kind of stuff.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dustin, for sharing all of your insights and telling us about your experience with telecommuting. And we really appreciate hearing from you. Thank you all for joining us on this webcast. If you have any questions, I've put my email in the chat. It's jmccomas@griffinhammis.com. And also, I wrote Dustin's name into the chat as well, so that you can, you want to Google him and find his movie, and you can also look up his music. I know that I've looked it up on Spotify, so for sure, make sure that you check it out. Again, thank you all so much. Thanks again, Dustin. Have a great day.
Yeah, no problem. I also put my email in there if anyone has any questions. So yeah, happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thank you.
Awesome.